Hello, you beautiful people. Mahesh Naidu here. Welcome to Storyline Techniques for Beginners. Articulate Storyline is a very widely used option when it comes to rapid e-learning. Because of its ease of use, brilliant quizzing tools, and a fabulous online community always waiting to help out whenever you need it the most. We'll begin with an overview of the core concepts of Storyline. Concepts that will help you use what you learn here for all your future projects. Then we shall look at the structured ways to work with layers and triggers. After that, we'll take a look into the three types of variable storyline offers, a very important subject, and how conditional interactivity individualizes the learner experience. It's no accident that Storyline enjoys a huge following. Do you want to take your storyline skills where you can excel? Super! Let's jump into it. You may have a question like, why are we covering concepts? And I know that's what most software training packages do. But if you want to dive and gain a deep understanding of storyline, then you need to know its intrinsic and elemental concepts. The initial one that I would like to go through first is layers, triggers, and states. These are the main tools to building interactive content in storyline. A layer is a section of the slide where additional content is displayed, usually in response to the learner doing something. Say, for example, take this scenario. I click on this choice and a layer of related content is shown. The beautiful point about layers from a developer's perspective is that they allow you to keep correlated content on one side, which will create momentum and push up your development process, keeping you better organized. From a student's perspective, layers create a more ordered experience of the content. Let's get back to this particular slide. I close this layer by clicking on the close button, which has a trigger applied to it. A trigger like I like to iterate using the same word. Trigger is an action. If you want to open a layer, close a layer, or change an object state, you'll be inserting a trigger. Notice how our character's appearance changes depending on the choice we make. Objects in your slide, whether they be characters, buttons, or text boxes, can be formatted to have various appearances or states. On this slide, there's a trigger that commands Storyline to change the character state depending on the options selected. Notice that the state of the button changes when I hover above it. We shall go into greater detail regarding these elements, but for now, know that layers, triggers, and states are the main tools for building interactive content in Storyline. Here's another important idea that will help you create engaging courses. Slide layers and layer-like elements like markers, scrolling panels, and lightbox slides can contain anything a slide can. It doesn't matter if it's text, images, characters, video, and audio. Let's take an example, an FAQ interaction. Each FAQ has a corresponding layer. On this slide layer, we have text, character, and a scrolling panel. A scrolling panel is a layer-like element and holds anything a slide can. Within the scrolling panel, we have text, a character, and a caption. If we want to make it even more complicated, we can drop a video inside explaining the process. So a layer or layer-like element can hold anything a slide can. Just a tip to keep in mind as you're thinking through the creation of your course. There is another core concept where Storyline offers conditional interactivity. This is just a decorative way of saying that you can present the learner with certain information if certain conditions are met. Let's say, for instance, you want to capture the learner's name and refer it to when they completed the course. Or you want to give the learner in a non-linear course a visual cue of the sections they completed, like, a menu. Here, the learner selects the scene, runs through the slides, and when they're back to the main menu, the name of that particular scene is grayed out. So the conditional interactivity is a big, big, big deal in Storyline and something I'll be discussing in great detail later in the course. Keyboard shortcuts are faster than using a mouse, and they provide relief for your hand, which makes it easier to work for a longer duration. Here are the ones that I use personally all the time. Control D, D as in duplicate, allows you to duplicate an object. Let's just say that now I want another text box, just like this one. So I'll select this text box, Control D, it duplicates that text box, and now I'm going to move it a little bit and I'll rename it. Control G, G as in group, allows you to group objects. I want this background and those two text boxes on it to appear exactly the same way. So I group them. Now I select the background and I hold down the Shift key. Select these two text boxes and then Control G to group. Now if you check the timeline, once you group something, it shows as group 1. Now let's go to the next one. Control A as in all, allows you to select all the objects on your slide. Now once they're selected, you can use the control arrow key in whichever direction you want to move all the objects at once. And this moves them in a 1 pixel of the direction of the particular arrow. Now, if you look at everything on the slide, it's a little too high. So let me just look at how I can actually pull them down with by say 1 or 2 pixels. Now all I have to do is say Control A, I'll select everything and then I'll use Control and I use whichever arrow key I need to adjust the height by pixels. Control J allows you to insert a picture. It pops up a folder for you to select the image. Select Open, move it over onto the slide and place it there. Now the next one is Control T, T as in text box. It allows you to place a text box onto the slide. Now once it's placed, we can change the font to any script that you want. The only thing over here is that whenever we commence a project, we usually use a style guide presented by the client and we use the fonts available there. But right now you can use anything you want. The next one is Control M. Control M allows you to insert a new slide. I'll be talking about this a little more in the later topics, but right now I'm looking at a new slide since there will be more information to be presented. Now, the next one is Shift F12. Shift F12 is a faster way of previewing your particular slide that you're working on. And when we do this and we memorize all these shortcuts, we're going to be even more efficient in our work and our productivity. We'll be working with slide layers a lot in Storyline. So it's a good idea to get comfortable with common tasks. You'll often be creating additional layers. There are a couple of ways you can do this. One way is to go down to the Layers panel and select the new layer icon. The other way is copying an existing layer since the layers usually share the same formatting properties. Select the layer you want to copy. In this case, it's mini image, and then come down to the duplicate selected layer icon and click that. And then, of course, you would give it a name. We have to name layers since it's a general practice, a good practice. We're going to double click in here and name this one product 1 or any name you would like. Hit enter. Now you can change the order of layers by selecting it and dragging it up and down. And you can delete a layer by selecting it, the one you want to delete. Now sometimes you want to change the way a layer behaves. To do that, you click the gear icon off to the right, and that brings up the slide layer properties. I just want to point out a few options here. Under your visibility options, you have the option to hide other slide layers, which we've selected to hide objects on the base layer, if you didn't want the learner clicking on that, or to hide the slide layer when the timeline finishes. There's actually a pretty important point here in that each layer has its own timeline. Base layer options, you can prevent the user from clicking on the base layer, or you can pause the timeline of the base layer. This comes into play especially when you're creating interactive video. And the revisits option, this would come up into play if you had an interactive object in your layer, say a button with a visited state. If you select the reset to initial state option, when the learner comes back to that layer, it will appear as if the learner had never visited it. If you select the resume safe state option, the layer will appear as the learner left it. You can also let Storyline decide for you. So there you have it, the most common layer tasks you would be performing in Storyline. Just remember, if a layer isn't behaving as it should, have a look at the slide layer properties. So we've come to the end of this video, and in the next video we'll work with buttons. See you in the next video. Now I'll show you the tasks you'll often perform when it comes to buttons, using Format Painter to paste the buttons, formatting to other objects, how to create a button set, how to copy and paste triggers to a particular object. So now I've got a button, one selected here, and look at all these cool built-in states that a button comes with, like normal, hover, down. And one of my favorite features of Storyline is that you can use Format Painter to paste the format and states of a button to other objects. Okay, so for example, you want buttons here to be more oval in shape. So to do that, you go up to Insert, over to the shape, and then select the oval shape, and then you click and drag where you want to place it. And since you need 2 of these, you need to use Ctrl D to duplicate the object. And now with the arrow keys, we'll just move it along and we align them. So now we want this to be, say, green. So we select the original choice one, the one above. Now we head over to the Home tab and Format Painter. Now we double click the Format Painter, and then we use that particular Format Painter and tap the new oval shape. We click on it. And once we do that, you can see that all the states just get transferred over to the oval shape. Now that's going to save you a lot of time, and there are more tricks like this which will save you a lot of time. Now in this scenario, you want to turn these shapes into a button set. So that again will save time. If you do that, Storyline will add a selected state to the button so the learner can see what choice they've actually selected. Now to create a button set, select your objects and hold down the Shift key and select the second one. We're going to right click, go up to button set. You can give it a name. Any name is okay. Last thing we need to do is paste the triggers from the original buttons above to the new buttons. So we do it one by one. So looking at the first button over here, we go over to the first button and then we can look at the triggers in the trigger panel on your right and see that there are two triggers associated with it. So what we need to do over here is that we need to do this one by one. We take the first trigger, we copy it, and then we go to the new oval shape here, the first oval shape that we created, and then we paste it. Then we take the second trigger and then we paste it again. Now we can delete the first button, the original one. So now we do the same thing for the second set of buttons. So we go to the original second button and then we take the first trigger, we copy it, and then we paste it on the new button, and then we go to the second trigger and do the same thing and paste it on. And what we need to do now is delete the original button. Now let's align the entire thing. Let's move it up, and we move this up. Once we do this, let's name the buttons. Since they're blank right now, let's name them. Let's name the first one as let's say option A, and the second one is option B. Now if you notice, all the states have changed, the triggers are there, and they're totally new buttons and in an oval shape. So this is how we transfer properties from here and there, and this is how we kind of manipulate the buttons, the shapes, and the formatting. Now let's move on to the next topic, next video, where we learn how to insert markers. The markers in Storyline that you see here are like a layer. They display overlay content like text, image, audio, or video in response to clicking or hovering over the marker. They do have other applications too, but markers are good when you want to call out information from a map or an image or any other thing. In this video, we'll be inserting a marker to add a location and explore formatting options. So to insert a marker, go up to the Insert tab. Over to the right, you see a marker. Select that. There's a drop down and you will see a lot of options. I'm going to select this as the marker style, and now basically when we click on the screen, this is where the marker is going to drop or be placed. How about say right here? Then if you don't want to open right there, we can just click and drag it over here. So let's begin to add some information to this particular marker. Let's say we add a title, a little description, and a picture. So we'll go up to marker over here, right here, and then we select options, select the media drop down, and you have some options here. We're just going to do, say, picture from file. But if you wanted to, you could do video from file, video from website, or you could record your webcam. Let's just keep it simple and use picture from file. Let's select that. So we'll grab a picture. Let's size this in by grabbing that outside handle. Now that looks really good. The formatting options, like most things in Storyline, are almost endless. So you can change the text fonts, different sizes, etc. You can change the marker styles if you go up to format here, just like that pin, but you could choose whatever you want to do. You can change the label styles, you could change the marker options. If you go up to the marker options here, especially important is the animation. So we have a swirl and you can have the pulse. So if you wanted to, you could use any one of those. So you can change the icon. And if you really like the icon, if you spent a little time formatting it, you can right click and set the default marker. So let's preview this by pressing Shift F12. See how this looks? Not bad at all. Hover over it, get a little bit of information, click on it, even more information. So there you have it, how to insert and format a marker in Storyline. Let's go to the next topic, inserting scrolling panels. So this is a problem for many creators. You've got a fabulous slide and then you figure out you've got a large block of text that isn't going to fit at all. So here is where you can insert a scrolling panel, which lets you scroll vertically through additional content. I use scrolling panels mostly for text, but they're also used to hold images, characters, videos, and other elements. So let me show you how to insert one. If you look at this particular paragraph, I have a problem right here. So much text simply isn't going to fit. So what do I need? I need to insert a scrolling panel. The first thing I'll do is I'll move this text to the side. Then I'll go up to the Insert tab. And then over to the right here, you see the scrolling panel. I'll select it. And then you're going to see your cursor will turn into a cross. So you can click and drag wherever you want that scrolling panel to be placed. And then when you let go, the scrolling panel is created, as you can tell down on the timeline here. So the next thing we need to do is place our text in the scrolling panel. Select your text and drag it. Move it up a little bit, and then when I let go, the scrolling panel is created. You can see I can scroll here. The last thing we need to do is format this text a little bit. So we'll right click, select format shape, select say solid fill, a white with 20% transparency or 25% transparency is fine. Just select close. Let's now preview the entire thing by pressing Shift and F12. See how that looks. There's our first layer, our first question, second layer, second question, and third with our scrolling panel. We are able to scroll. Looks good. So if you've got a large block of text or any image that won't fit where you need it to fit, a scrolling panel might be the solution. All right, so let's move on to the next topic, which is adding a zoom region to a particular image. There's a way you can spice things up by using the zoom feature in Storyline. You can use zoom to focus in on a particular section of an image, say a product, or a section of a website. I often use a zoom region to focus on a particular product. That's what I'm doing here. On this slide, I've got two products. I want to do a close-up of product 1 here. So about a second in, I'm going to insert a zoom region on this particular product. So to insert a zoom region, go up to Insert. Right below that, you see Zoom Region. Click that, and then what Storyline will do is drop in this zoom region. You need to scale this down. The aspect ratio will remain intact once you do that. Scale it down and move it up over product 1 here. Looks good. We have a zoom region. If we go down to the timeline, you can see the zoom. The next thing we want to do is match the zoom with the description. So let's preview how this looks by pressing Shift plus F12. If it's slow or fast, you can always edit the zoom transition speed by right-clicking, going to Zoom Transition Speed, and adjusting it there. Consider using it whenever you want to focus the learner's eyes to a certain section of your slide. All right, that's the end of working with content. Now let's move on to adding variables. I'll show you how to insert a text variable in Storyline so that you can capture and reference a learner's name in the course. So here we have the opening slide, and we'll put in our name, and we'll take the quiz over here on the left menu, we'll go to the results slide. Assuming that we pass the quiz, we get this personalized message. People really like seeing their names on the screen, and it's a very nice way to personalize instruction. So let me show you how to insert and reference a text variable. So here we are in slide view, and the first thing we need to do is create the variable so we can capture the learner's name. So we'll go up to insert all the way over to the right here, select text entry, and then click drag where you want the learner to type in their name. Let's format it a little bit. Let's enter, say, type your name. You'll notice over in the triggers panel here that Storyline has created a variable for us called text entry. Let's rename that. Let's do that by selecting this X here, manage project variables. We'll double click on the text entry, just the default name, and let's name it something more meaningful like a student name. And select OK. Now let's reference the variable. Let's go to the slide where their name will actually appear. Go to the quiz scene. The very last slide of the quiz scene is results. So this is where we want to reference the variable or have the student's name appear. So let's select Insert, Text Box. We'll drag out a kind where we want the learner's name to appear. Then we'll go into Insert and we're going to reference that variable, which is called student name. Select OK. We now need to format it. Formatting is very important. We'll center it, and right now let's just make it white. Now we've captured the name. We've referenced it. Let's preview the entire project now by pressing F12. Let's see how we did. Type in our name. We'll go to the quiz. Let's assume that we passed the quiz. Congratulations, Mahesh. You've passed the course. And that's how you insert a text variable. You might also use a text variable when you want to personalize a feedback on a question or a scenario. So let's now move on to a little more complex type of Storyline variable, the number variable. Storyline's number variable captures the number of times a learner clicks on an object or a button. So here we've got a results slide, and I want to allow the learner to be able to retry the short quiz only once. So the first thing is to create a number variable. Go over to the X here, Manage Project Variables. We'll select Create New Variable and let's name it something meaningful, like tries. The type of variable is a number variable. Set it to an initial value of 0. Select OK. We have our number variable. The next thing we need to do is add a trigger to adjust the variable. So we'll create a new trigger right here, and the action is adjust variable. Now which variable? The one we just created, tries. I'm going to add a value of 1 when the user clicks this button to retry quiz. If you look over in the triggers panel here, you'll see that the trigger that we just created is the last one. We are going to want to move that up. If we leave it here, this trigger will fire and this one won't. So it won't work. So let's select it and then move it right under the button. Next thing we need to do is let the learner know that there are no more tries. I want to do that through changing the state of their retry button from normal to disabled. Let's format the disabled state And then we'll create a trigger that will change the state from normal to disabled. So our retry quiz button is selected. Let's go to edit states and then we'll select the disabled state. Let's do something rather simple. Let's insert a text box, drag it where you want it, and something simple like you are out of retries. Select it. Let me make it red. Let's select the retry quiz button, go up to format and gray it out. Now we're done editing states. The last thing we need to do is add a trigger to adjust the state of the retry button from normal to disabled if they attempt more than one retry. Now let's go ahead and add the trigger. Create new trigger. Now we're going to change the state of the retry quiz button to a disabled state that we just created. When the timeline starts on this line, but only under certain conditions. So let's select show conditions. So to add a condition, press on this particular sign only if our retries is equal to a value of 1, which means they're trying to retake it more than once. So we'll type in a 1, select OK. Now let's preview this scene and see if we can retake the quiz more than once. We shouldn't be able to. I'll press F12 to preview. We were allowed to retake it once. Now we go to retry quiz and look, you're out of retries. So it worked. So that's how you insert a number variable to limit the number of retries. Now let's explore the true-false type of variable. The true-false variable is pretty handy if you want to present certain information. If you want to provide the learner with a visual cue that they finished a section, this course is basically non-linear. And so the learner will return to the menu slide once they've completed the various sections. I want to give the learner a visual cue that they've finished the first section. And I can do that by inserting a true-false variable. So the first thing we want to do is create a variable. We'll select Manage Project Variables and we'll select Create New Variable. We'll give it a meaningful name, First Section Complete. Type of variable is true-false variable. We'll set the initial value to false. And with true-false variables, they have two states, true, false, much like on or off. Select OK, and we have our first section complete variable. It's a true-false variable with the default value of false. Select OK, and let's move on. The next thing we need to do is add a new state to this first section link icon. So we'll go down to Edit States, select New State, and then give it a meaningful name like Complete. We'll select Add, and I'll continue to format it. I'm going to right-click, Format Picture, and then basically just going to gray it out a little. I'm going to set the transparency to around 60%, or let's go a little lower than that, say 50% looks good. And so this is how the first section link icon will appear when the learner has viewed the first section material. And so we're done editing states. The next thing we need to do is add a trigger to adjust the state on the first section icon to that new state that we just created if the variable is true. So let's do this. We'll create a new trigger to change the state. On which object? The first section link to the state of complete. That's the one we just started. And here is where it gets a little slightly complex. It's actually not when the user clicks, but it's when the timeline starts on this particular slide. So we want to change the state to complete when certain things happen. So let's select show conditions. Only if our first section complete variable is equal to a value of true. Remember, its default value was false, so we'll select OK. You may wonder what's going to adjust that first section complete variable. It's very simple. It's a trigger on the last slide of the first section or scene. We'll go up to story view, we'll scroll right down, we'll double click on that last slide, and I'm just going to create a trigger that's going to adjust the variable. Which variable? First section complete to a value of true. When? When the timeline starts on the slide. So once they get to this slide, the variable is going to adjust. I'll select OK. So let's preview this project by pressing F12. So here's the main menu. I'm going to go directly to the last slide, select on it, and because we've started the slide, the variable adjusts. We'll go back to the main menu to check, and the first section is now grayed out. So that's how you insert a true-false variable in Storyline. Now let's move on to the next video. We have a static slide of the theme. It's just text and images. So let's convert this into an interactive drag and drop using Storyline's Convert to Freeform tool, which you'll find right above on the top left, right about here. We'll head up to Insert tab, select Convert to Freeform. We'll select Drag and Drop and then select OK. The important thing to remember about drag and drop in Storyline is that every element on your slide is draggable and droppable. For you, that might be an image, a text, or shape. I've decided to have the learner drag the name to the appropriate image. It's a simple drag and drop just to let you, get a hold of the concept. So the next thing we need to do is set our drag items, which is going to be the text, in our drop targets. So that's going to be the appropriate image. So we'll select the drag item field and we'll select Sam's text and they're going to drag it to the appropriate image, which is Sam's picture. Now we'll select the drag item, the next one, which is Mahesh Naidu text, and that's going to be draggable and it's going to be dragged to his respective picture. Okay, so we've got the drag items in the drop targets. So now when we click on design under format, there are a few options that you need to know. You have an option to return an item to a start point if dropped outside any target or a correct target. So if they dropped outside a drop target, it would snap back to its original position. I'm going to check this, but it's something for you to at least think about for your projects accordingly. The next item is important for me, snap dropped items to target. Okay, we've got our options selected. We have our drag items set to drop targets. Let's select save and close. Now don't forget to format so that it looks neat and tidy. Alright, let's preview this. So Mahesh goes to Mahesh's image and you can drag Sam's text to Sam's image. Now if there is a swap over here, if we drag Sam's name to Mahesh's image and Mahesh's name to Sam's image, then we have a built-in layer that pops up which tells you whether you're right or wrong. So this is how we create the Convert to Freeform tool to turn a particular static slide into something more interactive. Here's a few of the publishing options in Storyline. To get to the publishing options, go up and select Publish. And we have the options on the left here and our features on the right. So the first one is Review 360. This is pretty amazing because once we publish the project here, it creates a link where you and your client can check and simultaneously give feedback, as well as track the changes. The second one is for web. Publishing for web. You choose this option if you're playing a presentation or a course from a website. Sometimes I choose this option and place the project online, like say my own server, and provide a link to people so that they can see it. The third one is video. This is where the entire project will be converted into a video and we can set the options below. The options are either to follow the next actions or the slide numbering. It's a regular video with no interaction. The fourth one is Articulate Online, which currently is on a notice and will be discontinued. The fifth is the LMS, which is a very popular option. There are two ways to track on the LMS. One is by results slide, which is basically the quiz slide, and you can have multiples of these. You can also track by using the number of slides viewed. The sixth is a CD option, if you wanted to distribute the course through CD. The seventh option is a Microsoft Word option. Many developers publish the course to Word as a way of creating a storyboard for the client. Basically, when you choose this option, Storyline is creating screenshots of your course and placing them in a Word document. So these are the publishing options in Storyline with suggestions on when you might use each.